Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have as my guests Gregory and Gail Hoag, and let me tell you about them. So Gail and Gregory Hoag are a rare fusion of consciousness and love, with over 4 decades of dedicated expertise in the realm of sacred geometry. They have illuminated the path to transformation, health, heightened awareness, stress reduction, and the removal of electromagnetic interference. Their visionary contribution extends beyond theory. Gail and Gregory have pioneered groundbreaking technologies that have touched lives across the globe. From their creation of energetic chambers to the development of intricate geometric grids, they have harnessed the power of sacred geometry to amplify planetary energies and elevate the human experience. I thought today a great topic for us would be the importance of connection, since you know I'm the connector for y'all out there. So today, please join me in welcoming Gregory and Gail Hoag. Welcome, y'all.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you,
It's
Victoria.
wonderful to be here.
And I
Thank
love
you.
the topic of connectivity because we talk so much about connection as well.
Mhm. And
So
it,
we're gonna
it
have-
is so important. I think sometimes people as entrepreneurs especially think that they have to figure it all out themselves, do it all themselves, and then they become frustrated and maybe quit. And there's so many great-hearted people out there to help them, just like yourselves. And so I love to connect them to those folks. Before we get into the tough questions, not so tough, but the interesting questions, let's tell the audience, where do you call home? Where do you live?
We're in Lyons, Colorado, which
Oh.
is north of Denver and on the way to Rocky Mountain National Park. So we live in
Oh, wow.
a beautiful area with a lot of land.
Nice, nice. Denver's a great area. I've been there a couple times with Toastmasters. They moved from California to the Denver area. I think it's Aurora, but I was a region advisor during that time of their move, and so I got to spend a few trips to there and see and experience Denver, and I just loved it. It was great. Of
Well,
course, I
we live,
wasn't there in the winter.
yeah, we live on a couple hundred acres outside of
Nice.
this little town in a valley where we have a lot of nature around us.
No.
And I find that that's an important part of connection.
Yeah.
Because when
Yeah.
you're connecting to nature, you're connecting with that essential rhythm within yourself. And it really helps to ground and be able to communicate with other people if you start with that basic connection to what's real in my world.
Mm-hmm. I know my grandmother and grandfather had a 60-acre piece of land, and can't really call it wasn't a working farm, but it was a pretty nice sized piece of land. And we went to my grandmother's every weekend, and I would just go off and walk and just, kind of get centered. I think connecting with nature and just appreciating stillness is really helpful for our minds. And there's so many people today that rush, and don't really take time for that, or they they feel like they have to be always doing and don't realize their body just needs sometimes just to rest.
Absolutely. And those essential connections are really the foundation for
Mhm.
us to be able to formulate the other kinds of connections that we want to create in our lives.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done, our work is with something called sacred geometry. And we find sacred geometry all around us.
Mm.
When we look at everything from our landscape to the way flowers are created, trees, there's patterns and rhythms and cycles that everything follows. And
Mm.
in order for us to really establish important connections that are full and nourishing for us, we need to know where we belong.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, that people who live in cities that don't have like the connection that you spoke about with your grandparents, if they don't have the time to be out there and have that quiet time and just, let nature speak to them and through them,
Yeah.
then it becomes very hard to create some of those other kinds of connections that happen in their lives.
Yeah, that's so very true. How did you discover and develop your understanding of this sacred geometry?
You want to start?
Okay, I'll start. For me, it was basically a spiritual experience. After about 10 years of working with different spiritual masters and different ashrams,
Mhm.
I built a pyramid with a friend that cost about 50,000 at that time. So in today's dollars, that's about $250,000 to create a field that shifted my energy so strongly, something called Kundalini started
Mm.
happening. Energy
Mhm.
started flowing through my body, and holes were being burned in my hands and my feet because the energy was so strongly
Wow.
moving through me. And eh, talk about connection. Ultimately, that's what Kundalini is about. It's about the energy that you are, the energy of the physical, the earth, moving back up through your body to
Mm.
connect with soul. And so this began my journey of communicating with the higher
Mhm.
part of myself,
Mhm.
communicating with energies and thought forms out of the physical that were giving me information on the way everything worked in terms of pattern and
Wow.
rhythm and cycle. And this is what we refer to as sacred geometry. So, what we've been doing is building these geometries that I've been seeing, that Gail's been seeing now for the last 40 years.
Wow.
And by bringing those things into an environment, it helps us connect to the bigger part of ourselves, to the
Mm.
fullness of our being. And that aspect that science talks about is quantum entanglement. There's that potential within every aspect of our being
Mm.
to connect with literally everything in
Mm.
the universe. And the power that comes with that connection, that's what we talk about is divine guidance, intuition, the ability to have the vibration that will allow you to connect with another human being.
And as we're talking about connection, our business, our website is called I Connect to All. And so that kind of gives
Mhm.
you a reference point,
Yeah.
how important connection really is to us. And our belief is that everything is connected. And in fact, when you get down to it, it's really all one. We go
Mhm.
through a process of trying to understand it. And in that cognitive understanding, we tend to want to break things down. And when we break things down, sometimes we have trouble seeing how it really all
Wow.
works
Yes.
together.
Mhm.
So the more that we're connected to our environment, connected to our heart center, connected to our breath, connected to our higher self, connected to each other, all of those things which are essential. They're part of what we're all here for. And those connections, unfortunately, get stifled in our lives. You know, whether it's emotional things that create fear or different kinds of things where we draw back away from those essential connections, or things that, you know, like we look out at the world, we get these broadcasts through the media of what's going on in the world. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got to protect myself. But you know what? Protection is another form of, it's a distraction from allowing us to really be connected. It's a form of fear. And what's really powerful, Victoria, is when we're connected, there's so much strength in that. Just like, you know, at the beginning when we were talking about those connections that are there for people out in the world, when they realize it, those are so essential and just drives their lives in anything they want to do.
So is this some way informing or aligned with our purpose or finding our purpose?
Absolutely.
Really, I mean, we feel ultimately our purpose as a human being is to expand our level of consciousness and to expand it all the way up to the level of soul, to be able to connect to literally everything in our universe with that essential flow of love. And so the opportunity is that we are in kind of like, if you think of an iceberg, we're like the tip of the iceberg, and yet so much is hidden underneath. That part that's dealing with our emotions, our thoughts, you can't see them, but they deliver so much control over our lives, our belief systems, our judgments. And so if we can expand and look at things from a higher perspective and expand into the fullness of our being, and that's what we do with the tools that we build, and that's been our experience, is being able to do that, we then can look at the world and not take things so personally, be able to understand how things are going together. We're able to feel that love and share that love. And so in a way, that's what I'm speaking to, that whole aspect of growth as an opportunity for being in a human body.
What about, as you were talking, I was thinking about those that have trauma. So many people have so much baggage and trauma. How can understanding sacred geometry and this language help them get through their trauma and into a better place?
That's a really great question. I think that part of the human experience is to be up against our edges. And that might come in the form of trauma. It might come in the form of relationships that don't work. It might come by wanting something that's just not manifesting. And so I believe that we then have the chance to really go deep into it and see what's underneath, what's the message underneath of it. And so what's the relationship to sacred geometry? Well, for me, when I was young, I wondered, where do I belong? You know, like I was this little girl thinking, I think I got dropped off on the wrong street corner. What happened here? And I wanted to find what created those relationships. The connections. Where are those things that enable us to feel like we belong? And belonging is a very, very important human need that we all have. So in looking out in nature and seeing these different patterns and the way things worked and the way it spoke to me, then I started to see sacred geometry helped me feel my foundation, so that my fabric of my body and my life is similar to what goes on in the universe, what goes on, naturally. And so that sense of belonging helps so that we don't feel like I'm alone when I have something really rough that happens. Instead, maybe it's a message that says, how do you reach out? How do you find the people or the situation or the understanding that really brings the connection and that feeling of belonging back again? So not taking it personally, and instead finding the ways to assimilate the information in a whole nother way. So it teaches us, it helps us to evolve to a much higher level. It helps us to break through some of the boundaries that we may have had before that are ready to open up.
And also, it's more than just a theory or words or a mental exercise. Sacred geometry has allowed us to build tools. So for those of you who can see this, if you're doing this on YouTube, then here, for example, it's a front and a back side of a pendant that we're wearing that has over 35 antenna systems inside.
Wow.
So what this does, it has two sides so that it's moving energy either up or down, depending on which direction you're having it face. And when you're working with some of these energies, it starts to calm things. It starts to project a different field of energy. And what I mean by that is, for example, I had one grandmother say, what I love about the pendant is that my grandchildren used to run away from me, and now they crawl all over me. And I've had teachers say how it makes it so much easier for the students to understand what they're saying. I've had prison guards say that they're treated differently when they're wearing one of these pendants or something they can carry in their pocket that we make. The prisoners treat them differently. The energy shifts. So much of what we think of connection, that it is dealing with, am I speaking clearly? Am I communicating properly? But even more importantly is what's coming through from our vibrational field. What's coming out of our heart? How are we listening to someone? And is that fostering the connection? And so what we found is even some of the things that are spinning behind me, these geometries can shift the energy in an environment such that people communicate differently when they have some of these in the environment. We had one law office said to us that they've always got one of our forms in the middle of their conference room where they get a lot of depositions. A lot of people are on opposite sides. And they said people yell at each other less when they have some of these tools running. And so communication, we sometimes think of it in a very small box, but it's exploded much, much larger when we think of the energy that goes behind it, the energy in the space that allows for a clear receiving of what's being offered. And like with the grandmother, children and animals have been great tests to see how these things work because they're attracted to them and they really like the energy.
It really sounds like, a lot of people today have trust issues. That, a part of us as entrepreneurs is we want people to know, like, and trust us. But what I found is a lot of people come again, with that baggage that causes them to not trust. And so it sounds like this would be a great way to maybe break down some of that trust issue to allow them to be open, vulnerable, allowing themselves to be loved and to love.
That's a big, big part of it. And I think it gets back to connection again, because when we're feeling like it's safe, it's okay, it's because we're feeling connected instead of separated. We have around us so many things that ring this bell of separation. And the separations really, when you compare that to how the universe is created, there's no separation. One of the things that I remember that it spoke to me way before I got into this, I was an artist, so I was really studying how things looked out there and how do you determine what a line is and basic fundamental things about drawing. And what I realized is that it's all about perspective. It's all about my relationship to what that is. And I couldn't tell where there was a line if I wasn't relating to it somewhere. It wasn't like there was a real separation out there in the universe. It was my perception that created that. And so the more that we realize that we belong here, that we're here in a universe that actually it is, as we just wrote a book, and one of the things that we talk about in that book is that the fabric, the foundation of everything out there in life and consciousness is actually love. Love is what's really holding all of this together.
Yeah.
And when we come back to referencing those important points, then the other things that are happening, the fears that have been built, they don't have that same impact. They're just, it's a blip on the screen. Some people just look at it as an anomaly, something that's not real. And so we want to get people back to understanding what is real. And that's when they can function as truly whole human beings with all of who they are and with their baggage. Because, I've loved the work of Brene Brown, and she talks about authenticity. And you can't have authenticity without showing vulnerability. And when we show vulnerability, that's part of who we are. And that's part of the lovable part of who we are.
Exactly. As I teach public speaking for people, and, I said the best speech is one that's just having a conversation, allowing yourself to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be you. And, so many people try to get up there and speak like they've seen someone else speak and have a mask on it, and it doesn't relate and it doesn't connect the people the way you would want them to.
Absolutely.
Talk to me more about your sacred geometry book. How has it helped? I mean, what can I gain from that by reading this book?
Here's, for those that are watching, can see the cover of the book, and they can get it by going to I connect the number 2 all all.com. So ICONNECT 2 all.com/book. There's more information. And in this book, we're talking about what's going on with consciousness, and everything is really driven by consciousness. And underneath all of that is this sense of love. And often people don't experience that because there are so many things in our environment that disconnect us from that higher flow. And like I spoke earlier to the metaphor of us being like an iceberg, well, think of all the things going on coming to you from soul that have to pass through all these levels, and there are things like electromagnetic frequencies, toxins in the environment, our fears that we've talked about, judgments and beliefs, and all of these different elements, and especially negative emotions, all the fear and anger and sadness and guilt that disconnects us from higher self. And that's where we talk about tools and ways that we've constructed things that are following in the pathway of the way universe has constructed things. And so if we bring those same elements into our environment, then we start to resonate, vibrate with a more natural way of being. And it's just like you say, the importance of being a good speaker is to be vibrating with your natural way of being. If you see everyone that you're speaking with to be a friend, to be someone that cares about you, you care about them, and you're going to share things that are going to be naturally what you would share with a friend. You don't have to be someone that knows this or that. If your friend were sitting there, they'd slap you upside the head and say, get off it. I'm your friend. I know who you are. You don't have to pretend to be someone else. And that's true for all of us. You know, when we connect with what's real inside ourselves, we're able to share what's real with other people. And if they start getting into something that's taking them off, we don't have to go into that space with them. We can be holding a loving space to help pull them back into center, just as I would hope they would help me come back into my center.
And I know that, you know, our energy impacts our health and prosperity. So talk to us a little bit of how the technology improves health and prosperity.
So, you know, before there's any form, structure, before there's anything tangible that we can see, feel, touch, everything, when you get down to it, is just pure energy. And I find one of the things that's so fascinating about sacred geometry is that it shows us how you go from this amorphous pure energy, and we'll just call it love for now, because there's love is creation. And so this energy is working to find a way to come into form. And so it has all these patterns and it comes into form. And so that's sort of the origin of it all. And when there are things that block that flow, that natural flow of energy, then our health is impinged, our prosperity is impinged. And really what it is, it's that something is restricting that natural flow of creative energy. That's all there for us. So if we look at it like that, then instead of getting upset or, you know, going through some other kind of turmoil around it, instead we can look at it and go, how do we open up that flow of energy? So that means we step back, we take that moment, that breath, and we find our center again. And through that, we can reconnect once more. And that affects our health. That affects everything that we do. It affects our relationships, how we show up in the world. And again, we can just say it's kind of fun to look at it as just pure energy. You don't have to make anything more out of it than that. And do you want more of that energy in your life? Then, you know, what we've worked with is finding the ways to open ourselves to that flow of energy. So all of it is working better for us on all the levels.
Wow. So time is flying by, and I'll probably have to have you back again. One last question. Are EMFs really a problem? And for those that might not know what EMFs, explain that and what can be done to overcome these issues.
Definitely, they are a problem. And I will show you in this slide where I talked about all the blockages that happen in that flow of energy. Electromagnetic pollution is there at the top where it's working to jam those frequencies, those connections to higher self. And in actually 2019, Rudolf Steiner was giving a lecture saying how much they keep us from being 1919, excuse me, my misspeak. Yeah, over 100 years ago, shortly after they were introduced at the World's Fair by Nikola Tesla, alternating current, he said it's creating a problem for human beings. Now, we can't block them, and people want to run away from them. There's no place to run. It's all about raising your frequency so you stay connected. And so you can't build a wall around yourself or put a sticker on your cell phone to block them, because if you block them, your cell phone won't work. And we won't be able to talk to each other on Zoom the way we're talking right now. So we have to work with our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, our mental bodies, and raise their frequency so that we stay in connection to the bigger part of us, that which is real. And so then we can be in the world, but not totally of the world. And that's the way we can solve some of these issues, not by trying to change them, but by changing ourselves.
So how do we raise that?
Well, we actually created this geometry that it spins, and it's a very special geometry with lots of important things in the way it's constructed, and it shifts the way the energy is. Now, it doesn't, like Greg said, it's not going to block those frequencies, but what it does is it enhances our connection. And just like we've been talking through this whole time, it's the connection that needs to be reestablished. So if we support that connection, then it works. And here's an interesting thing. Back in 2013, where we lived, there was this absolutely enormous flood that happened. And we live in a rural area, and there was a river that was kind of like over a football field away from us. Well, it flooded so much that it just flooded out our land, and a lot of land around us washed all kinds of things away, including the electricity, and we don't have cell phone service anyhow, or else we didn't back then. Now we're starting to have it. But what was very interesting is that it was such a nice energy because there wasn't all that, chatter going on. We were that way for maybe about 6 weeks, got used to the feeling of that energy. And when we created this structure, and when Gregory turned it on, I went, oh, wow, that's what it felt like when we didn't have all of that wiring of the in walls and the, and the frequencies that made, that kind of an impact on us. And our bodies know it, our emotional beings know it. And so that's what this particular structure does. It's called the EMF solution. And it just really helps us to be centered and maintain those connections so that we can weather the storms.
Wow. So interesting. Well,
it's actually called the 5G solution
it's
now.
called the 5G solution
because we upgraded it because so many people were concerned about the next level, the 5G, and there'll be other levels after that.
I know here in Georgia, they already have 10G. So.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And it's just they're upping the frequencies of our environment. And so we have to work with technologies that keep pace with
Yeah.
allowing us to upgrade our internal environment.
Wow. So interesting. Well, as I said, I'll have to have you back again because there's just so much that we could talk about more. But for those that are listening, we're going to share my screen with contact information. If you're just listening, obviously you should have been taking notes and have a paper and pencil. But if you didn't, go grab it now, and I'm going to share my screen. If you're just listening, you can go ahead and do a screenshot. All of this will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling, so you can please subscribe to that, or my Find Your Leadership Confidence. But for now, if you're watching, go ahead, take the screenshot right now. Listening, the website, as was given earlier, is iConnect2all. That's a number 2, all.com. iConnect2all.com. On Facebook, it's Metaform Sacred Geometry Tools. And Metaform is capital M, Sacred, capital S, Geometry, capital G, and Tools is capital T. And YouTube at Sacred Geometry Tools, again, initial caps on each of those 3 words. I'm going to turn it over to Gregory and Gail to talk what will you find when you go to those websites, and a little bit more about the 3 powerful free tools that you have.
Okay. So when you go to our website, you'll see some of the different geometries, the different tools that we've created.
Perfect.
If you go to the page about our book, you'll learn more about the book and what people have said about it and what you can get out of it. And that's iconnectall.com/book. And the book, by the way, is also available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And that's a great way to learn a lot about what we've been talking about, what we've been doing for, wow, over 38 years. So we've done quite a lot. And what we're offering are some meditations and different things that can really support you in the connections that we've talked about.
Sounds wonderful. Well, Gregory and Gail, it's been just wonderful chatting with you about this and learning about what you're doing and your pendants and the different things. I encourage everyone to go to the website, see what they have that might be helpful for you. If you have any questions, please do reach out to them on social media, on the places that we gave to you. And you can always comment on these podcasts. Let me know and I can connect you with them as well. But thank you so much for being wonderful guests tonight.
Oh, thank
Our
you.
pleasure. Thank you so much. Great questions, by the way. Really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Yes.
Yes. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.